From the studios of the Department of Communication in Phillipsburg, welcome to Next Level Thinking. Here are your hosts, Team APAP, St. Martin.
Hello and welcome to Next Level Thinking with your psychologist from APAP SXM. My name is Stephanie Hassett and I'm a child and adolescent psychologist. I'm here together with
Sanne Gruiters and
Caroline van Oost.
This program has been made possible by the Ministry of Public Health and DCOM. This program highlights topics that help deal with the subject that matters the most, ourselves. Today in this first episode of Next Level Thinking, we will introduce you to a world of psychology. We will discuss what psychology is all about, the misconceptions, and useful tips for everyday life. But before we go into that, Caroline, can you tell our listeners a bit more about APAP SXM first?
Well, APAP stands for Association of Psychologists and Allied Professionals. SXM, of course, for St. Martin. We were established in 2016, and our goal is to promote the practice for professional development in psychology and related fields. We are focused to serve on the social and professional interests of psychologists and related professionals. So we are not an association in the sense that we are a facility, but we're really serving for the interest of professionals in the psychology field.
And how does APAP set out to do so?
Well, we have several goals that we invest in. For example, we find it important that we follow the standards in the needs criteria to be active in the field of psychology. So our members should also apply to be able to become a member of association. So members of APAP stands for quality in the field.
They become a member and then what? What does the APAP do?
Yeah, so when you're a member, we also invest in training and supervision and sharing knowledge. So we keep each other up to date from the latest developments in our work field, for example.
Yeah, so that is all about sharing our experiences, our knowledge, and making sure that we have colleagues here, because on a small island, of course, a lot of us work on a solitary base, but with APAP SXM, we have the opportunity to share information and to connect.
And how often does such a meeting or take place?
Well, each month we get together, and each month is different. So sometimes we have intervision, then we share the knowledge, then we discuss cases, then we support each other. But we also have meetings where we discuss developments within government policy, for example. How can we be of support of that? What do we think is important for quality criteria within our work field? And those kind of things we also discuss, I think, monthly. But besides meeting with each other, it's also an association that connects with other associations. Like I said before, government, but also like the Social Workers Association that we also have on the island, and other related fields. So we really are trying also to connect and to build and to invest into psychology.
Mm-hmm. Right. So APAP kind of upholds the standards of the profession, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, you could say it like that. And I think many people on St. Martin knew us, especially since Hurricane Irma, because after the hurricane, we did a lot of volunteer work. And that was a lot of work that was not particularly related to what we just mentioned. So people saw us as a sort of a healthcare provider. We went in the field to just share information about what people could expect after a hurricane and how to deal with stress. There were a lot of businesses who asked APAP SXM to give information sessions, and that is something it was a lot of work, and we love to do that. But that is not the thing the association is actually for. So now we're more focused again on our professional development and the psychological field.
Right. So we're more like an umbrella for psychologists, where all the psychologists come together. We get a chance to meet and discuss the important developments in our profession, mm-hmm. and make sure that all of us take that to our respective jobs and organizations where we work.
Indeed. And also what our goal is to provide information. Where can you go if you need a psychologist? And also, what is psychology? So actually the topic we're talking about here today is one of the goals of the association.
Exactly. That we really want to emphasize everyone how important psychology really is, and how important it is that everyone gets proper health care. So I guess that everyone roughly has an idea of what psychology is. What do you think, Sana?
I think so, Stephanie. And in many ways, our conceptions are probably correct. Psychologists do work in mental health clinics, schools, in private practices, and they do provide therapy for people in distress. But there are a lot of psychologists in the world, and most of them who work in other places doing work that we are probably not aware of. So I think that could be something we can discuss later in this program.
Right. Because we don't only have the psychologists that are working as therapists, but we have psychologists working as maybe in business is life on the work floor, etc. But we can discuss that later on. Yeah. I guess another common misconception is that you go to a therapist and you just lie down on a couch, or that they think that we're just there to give them the meaning of life. Because Sana, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what psychology means.
Yeah, meaning of life, indeed. The word psychology comes from the Greek word psyche, meaning life, and logos, meaning explanation. So explanation of life. Doesn't that sound great?
That sounds
So you just
awesome.
go to a psychologist and they explain how life works.
Yeah, exactly. But that's not what we do.
No, unfortunately not. Actually, what I tell clients when they visit me is that they come with a lot of questions they have in life, and they ask ourselves the same questions over and over and again without finding the right answers. And then they give me these questions and they ask me these questions, and I tell them, well, I don't have the answers.
And
they look at me like, what? But that's what I came for. I just want to hear those answers. I need those answers to understand my life. But I will tell them I have more questions. But those are questions you will probably not ask yourself. So it will give you a different perspective on life, and hopefully to help you to find the answers to your questions.
Right. So we're not mind readers. We are no telepaths. We do not know what you're thinking.
No,
or what you're going
let
through.
that be clear. If every time when I tell somebody, hey, I'm a psychologist, they go like, ooh, can you read my mind? Or what's wrong with me? Or like,
You diagnose me?
Yeah, we cannot read your mind.
No.
That's for sure.
No, we can't, and we do not want to. We just want to help you along on your process. So I guess what people actually know about psychology is only a little part, and there are some pretty big misconceptions kind of fuzzying the water, blurring the water. Before we get more into that, we'll go into a short break, and after the break, we'll discuss what else is there to psychology than only therapy. Stay tuned.
Next level thinking.
It's hard to make big changes in life. The energy, time, and commitment are often too great. That's why many men in our community struggle with their health. The Department of Collective Prevention Services is encouraging all men in our community to take the positive step and get checked. Schedule your annual medical screening, practice a healthy lifestyle by eating healthy, exercise regularly, and practice safe sex consistently. This message is brought to you by Collective Prevention Services, a department of the Ministry of Health.
I was deceived about the nature of my job. I was abducted and sold. All my documents were confiscated and money was withheld from me. I was isolated and confined to one area. I was forced into prostitution. I was forced to lie to authorities and my family. Now that you know, what will you do?
You can help by calling the National Reporting Bureau on Human Trafficking at 542-1553 or send email to naticotip@gmail.com. Human trafficking and exploitation. Please report it.
Hey! Prevention is the cure. Help us, we help you. Stop disease from spreading. Because of mosquito. I got a message for you. Say what? Please listen carefully. Listen. You can do your part to stop mosquitoes from biting me. What? Get rid of all containers. Get rid of them with water in them. Hey. Don't give mosquitoes no chance to lay eggs in them. Cause we don't want no disease. We don't want dengue. We don't want tunya. We don't want Zika. No. No. Hey. No. No. What? Help us, we help you. Stop disease from spreading. Stop it. Because of mosquito.
This is Viking Voss. This message was brought to you by the Collective Prevention Services. Remember, do your part and stop disease from spreading.
Because of mosquito.
You are listening to Next Level Thinking on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
So we're back with Next Level Thinking, discussing what psychology actually is. Just before the break, we found out that there are quite some big misconceptions about psychology. Another misconception we have is that, we shortly mentioned it, lying down on a couch.
Yes. That is a misconception. Actually, I do not even have a couch in my office. Not every psychologist has a couch. So when you go to a psychologist, don't take it for granted that you can lie down on the couch and listen to the psychologist telling you what's life all about. Because that's not how it works. Actually, you gotta sit up straight. You gotta work. You gotta work to understand how your life works and how you have to deal with things. So, yeah.
It's a pretty active process.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I guess another misconception is that only when you have a very, very severe case or issue or problem, you go to a psychologist. But that's not the case.
No, indeed. It's not the case because actually it would be better if you go before it becomes so severe. Then it's easier for us to help you. And also it can prevent bigger problems. For you and also for the people around you. So it's not only for severe cases, also for milder cases.
Exactly, Caroline. I have a couch in my office, but you can come to me for a mild issue like, I don't know what to do with my child.
Do people lie down on your couch then?
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do.
But sometimes they don't. Not everyone. Sometimes they choose a chair over the couch, and it all depends. They're free to sit wherever, but as you said, it's an active process and it's not necessarily a severe, a big case. Sometimes they have a minor question about a little hiccup in their lives and they want to come and discuss it and reflect it back with someone who can maybe give them a different perspective and they move on with their lives.
Yeah, the couch is a traditional view. That used to be the case like ages ago when you had like Freud and he had his couch and you lie down over there. Well, no, we're not Freuds.
No.
Freudian people, no, not at all. So we're psychologists and we do it in an active style.
Yeah, and of course every psychologist will have his or her own style, and I think it is good to see and to look for a psychologist that will match your style as a client. But everything a psychologist does is based on scientific research, and that is an important part as well. I think we'll come back to that later as well.
Oh, definitely. Right. It's not only about the therapy. It's like, as you said, Sana, there's a scientific part about it. And all the therapy that we do is based on scientific research. So let's go a little bit more into that. What's behind and what's next to the therapy in psychology? Because that's not the only thing that psychologists do.
Yeah, that is indeed a big part, Stephanie, the scientific research and the therapy that we give. But besides that, let's see, you go, for example, to whatever supermarket, let's not call names, but do your groceries, right? Okay, so if you have kids, imagine, you go to that store and you have your list of groceries, the things that you wanna go and buy. And there your kid is in the middle of the supermarket throwing a temper because you're not buying those colorful cereal.
Oh, yeah.
Crying, yelling, blocking the whole aisle. Yes, the child will let everyone know that you are a horrible parent and you will feel like that, right, Caroline?
Yes. And you can almost feel it. If somebody tells that story, you're like, oh, yeah, you can totally picture it happening. And I think a lot of people have similar stories like that.
Right. And the feelings of shame come up, guilt, and oh my gosh, this child just has to stop screaming and yelling. I would just wanted to do some groceries. Exactly. And all these emotions go through you, and there's all this reactions, and like you want to react, you want to respond, your behavior, you might be upset, worried.
All of that is psychology?
All of that is psychology.
It is about thoughts, it is about emotions, it is about behavior. Psychology.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Personally, we go through a lot. I mean, we think throughout the day, and that influences what we do and how we think about people and things around us. It's constantly there.
Mm-hmm. It is. And back to that supermarket. So then indeed I think you will probably put that pink
cereal
box
box.
in the shopping cart. So you go to the cashier, and there it is.
Oh,
Just
yes.
Look to your left, look to your right.
To the left.
To the left.
You're going to
Yeah.
see the candy.
Candy everywhere, probably on the level of your child again. You're waiting there, and it's not for no reason that the candy is on that particular spot in the supermarket.
No, there is a strategy behind that. There's a psychological strategy behind that.
Yeah.
I read a scientific research that said everything on the left side in the supermarket you're more prone to buy. So
Okay.
people avoid the left side.
Yeah.
But yes, the cash register is on the left side. The candy is on the left side. Eye height of your child, right? You see it, but you have to look down. Kids is right in front of them.
So they see it.
They see it and they want to buy it.
So Stephanie's psychology is in the supermarket.
Consumer psychology is in the supermarket. Trying to persuade people to buy stuff is definitely psychology. We need to research what people want, when they want it, how they want it, and we present it to them like that so they buy it sooner.
You just have to put on your television. I mean, look at all the commercials.
Exactly. They do exactly the same thing. They try to persuade you into buying things.
So it's not just Dr. Phil who is a promoter of psychology on the television.
No, it's not just Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil has the therapy style, right? What we just discussed. He does
He has a specific therapy style to mention,
exactly.
though.
Oh yeah, definitely. Dr. Phil has a different style. He has the patient therapist style, right? He's sitting there telling the patient, helping the patient out with their problems. But there's also this different psychology, consumer psychology, where psychologists are trained to know and to learn about what makes people buy things. Right? Let's, for example, this big fast food restaurant, very, very popular with kids, that decided a couple of years ago, or research showed that a couple of years ago, they decided to change their color.
Our color?
Their color, yes. They changed their color to green, from red to green.
Huh.
Because green signifies health, right? Healthiness. And as we all know, a couple of years ago, this healthy lifestyle trend started to pick up. And everyone started to realize that, hey, we need to be more healthy. We need to watch what we're eating. So this big fast food restaurant thought, okay, so if everyone is going to eat healthy now,
let's turn our letters green. So the hamburger is healthier?
The hamburger is not necessarily healthier, no, but they make us believe that it's healthy.
Yeah, so Stephanie, what you mean, even that restaurant uses psychology to get people to buy their hamburgers.
Exactly, and to have people continue buying. I mean, as over the years, people change, cultures change, those bigger companies have to change with their population in order for them to continue to sell their product. So they need psychologists on board who can tell them what to do.
And if you think about it, you can see and experience it everywhere. Like if you go to the movies, and there are commercials, and sometimes there's a sound, like somebody's opening a bottle, like, psh, and then, and you know already what you're going to buy in the break.
Exactly. So it triggers us. And this is actually based on a very popular experiment from Mr. Pavlov and his dogs. So before he would feed his dogs, he would make the dogs hear a bell.
Yeah.
And then he would present the food to them. Now, as the time went along, he would do this continuously. As soon as he would ring the bell, the dogs would start to drool, even if there was no food presented, because their brain was kind of trained of, when I hear the bell, that means food. I guess the same happens during lunchtime for kids in school.
Indeed. Or during the movies when I hear that
Exactly.
sound.
I feel like drinking a soft drink right away.
I was just thinking, isn't it time for a break to get some drinks yourself?
You're right. Let me just recap. So,
It's all around us.
it's
Psychology
all
is
around us. Right. It's not just about ourselves, but also how we interact with our surroundings. How do we react and do we behave to certain things? If my boss gives me compliments, will I work harder? Or if a commercial repeats certain phrases or sounds, as you just said, Caroline, over and over again, will I be quicker to buy the product when I actually see it in the store? So not only the effect, though, that the surroundings have on us, but also how do we influence our surroundings? Very interesting. So since psychology is everywhere and in all of us, does that mean that we're all psychologists? Right? More about that after the break, and more about the different types of psychology, because it's not just consumer psychology and therapist-client psychology. Stay tuned. See you after the break.
Next Level Thinking.
I was deceived about the nature of my job. I was abducted and sold. All my documents were confiscated and money was withheld from me. I was isolated and confined to one area. I was forced into prostitution. I was forced to lie to authorities and my family. Now that you know, what will you do?
You can help by calling the National Reporting Bureau on Human Trafficking at 542-1553 or send email to naticotip@gmail.com. Human trafficking and exploitation. Please report it.
You are listening to Next Level Thinking on St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9.
So welcome back, listeners, to Next Level Thinking. For those who are just joining us, today we're discussing what psychology actually is. Before the break, we've heard some misconceptions about psychology, such as all psychologists are telepaths and that psychology is about laying down on the couch in front of a stranger, pouring out your life story. Well, we established that that is not the case. During the second segment, we have established psychology is not just therapy. Psychology is actually all around us, all day, every day. As we just spoke about it, it's in our commercials, our behaviors, thoughts, feelings, all around. Psychology is a study of the mind and behavior, and it basically researches why people do what they do when they do it. So we were just talking about consumer psychology.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about persuading, Stephanie. And
Exactly.
actually, maybe people now think psychologists are mind manipulators.
Yeah, so that's not really the case, right?
No.
It's not all that negative. So let's talk about how psychology also can positively influence our lives.
Yeah, and what about the environmental issues? So thinking about cleaning, recycling, finding the utmost needed answer to deal with our dump, for example. It is something we see and we smell every day. A lot of people talk about it, and not only on the streets, on Facebook as well, social media, and everyone is pointing fingers. And I think psychology could be a way to look at this and to see how we can change as people of St. Maarten to make the difference.
That's a good one, Sanna, because indeed, most of the time people are looking at what are we going to do to stop the fires. But you can also look at it, what are we going to do to stop preventing that we're going to get the dump? How are we going to get the fire burning within our hearts, within our souls, within our attitudes to become more eco-friendly?
Right. So there is various aspects to that. So there's one that I definitely want to point out, which is what we call in psychology the bystander effect, right? What Sana, what you were saying, we're all seeing it happening. We're all looking at it. And we're all waiting for someone else to do something, as you said, Carolina, but we kind of need to find that spirit in ourselves to make a change. Now, psychology is also in that, in finding a solution for a community-based problem. How to solve that? How can we make recycling, for example, easier for people?
Indeed, and how can you get people to, change their behavior? Because it may be more easy to just get that plastic cup instead of an eco-friendly cup. But how can you make it so attractive for persons that they do that? So that's a very important aspect, Stephanie. And psychology can be, I think, a good answer for that, or not an answer, a perspective. It can give you a perspective how to get people moving, how to change their attitudes, how to change their behavior. Because what nowadays a lot of people do, and that's great, of course, is providing information. But only with providing information, you're not there. You should let people feel it, experience it. So I think we can do a lot more concerning nature and psychological strategy on the island. So maybe it's time to also take that perspective.
Right. And I guess there are also other ways to influence a community at large, right? We have the experiment where people put streetlights on. Caroline, maybe you can say some more about that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing. It was in New York. I think they did that somewhere this year. They did a big research, and they had like different houses that were going to be rebuilt. And half of the houses got streetlights or extra streetlights, specific kind of streetlights, and the other half of the houses did not. And they saw after half a year that 39% of the crime rates dropped. And that was because of the light effect. So the light that you have in a specific area has an influence on safety feeling, but also really crime rates. So people don't dare to rob you in clear lights instead of a dark alley. So it has a big influence. So light can also be a strategy used from a psychology perspective.
Right. And not only in safety, but the color of light is something they use in a spa as well.
Yes.
I mean, to relax. And not only the light, but also smell.
Yes. Yeah. So what I understand from that, changing something in the environment, making an environmental change to facilitate that community, to facilitate that group of people, helped create a sense of psychological awareness, if I can call it that. People were aware of, hey, I'm being seen.
Exactly.
I can't do certain things, which made everyone feel safer in that community.
Yeah, knowing what can influence our behavior can have a big effect and gives us strategy to use. So psychology is not only that therapy, it's also that. But think also about classroom. How you set up your classroom has an influence on how your child or your student is able to focus. If you just put all the chairs and the table just somewhere, it will be chaos.
Right.
Maybe for some children it will be nice, but for most of them it will not be. So also how you set up your classroom has a big influence on the way that your students will excel or not.
How they will learn. Definitely. Is a classroom too overcrowded? Is there too much going on? Too much distraction? Then we can't be surprised if they look more at the walls and the posters than at their notebooks, for example. I can imagine.
But if it's too structured and there is nothing to look at, I think children will get bored and will see some behavioral problems in the classroom as well. So it's difficult to find that balance.
And also we learned over time, right? When you look at a classroom like 20, 30 years ago, it's totally different than nowadays. And there are even some people saying now that some children should even stand while they're learning.
Oh, yes.
Or that they should have a chair where you can move around a little bit on. So that you shouldn't just sit straight and listen to your teacher, because maybe that's asking too much. So we also learn and develop over time, and that's also psychology. Yeah. Because actually, psychology is not that old, huh?
No.
We are quite young in our field.
Right. So I think what you're saying, I heard about that in Holland, that a school started with desks that can actually lift the tabletop all the way up so that the children can stand. And they can choose whether to sit down, stand up, but while doing their work. So for the more active kids or those who just like standing while working, it's easier. But also think of a lot of workplaces now in bigger countries, they use flexible seating. Yes. Right. So you don't only sit in one office structurally, you get a laptop and you are allowed to sit in different spaces. And there is a huge company that's even more playful and has like all types of ping pong tables and
but even think about the Silicon Valley, and they have like in their breaks they can go to specific areas to relax, so their productivity will increase. So that's actually also use of psychology to make sure that your employees are feeling well, and so they can be as efficient as possible and create the best interest for you.
So psychology is all about that well-being, making people feel well enough so that they're productive enough and so that they can achieve success. So as we discussed in this segment, we have psychology in various areas. We have consumer psychology, we have the personal aspects of psychology, we have psychology in politics, environmental psychology, and psychology in the work floor. After the break, we'll talk more about the profession in itself. Stay tuned.
Next Level Thinking.